Good afternoon. Our next speaker, Major George A. Filer, has spent 20 years in the United States Air Force working as an intelligence officer, and he has accumulated more than 5,000 hours of flight time before his retirement. He graduated from Squadron Officers School and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. He was awarded the Bronze Star for his service in Vietnam. During his career, he chased UFOs and became an expert in unidentified flying objects with special intelligence and above top-secret clearances. He holds a master's degree from Central Michigan University in 1976. He also publishes a very popular UFO updates newsletter called Filer's Files, which is published to more than 8,000 people. Without any further delay, let me welcome to the stage Major George Filer.
Well, thanks for coming. I always feel that we have a very elite group of people that are coming to these conferences and much higher level of intelligence than their average person, I think. I put out Filer's Files, and it's free. And if anybody doesn't get it, just send an email to Major Star, and you'll be on our list of some 8,000 people that get it. And most people claim that they like it, so. I'm going way back to when I was just 5 years old in 1940, and I lived in this apartment building here up on the second floor. And I used to look out the window all the time, out across the area, and lo and behold, I got to see UFOs. I'm not sure my parents believed that I saw UFOs, but I saw them regularly. Actually, what I would see would be all these birds, and these birds would congregate together, and thousands of them, and they would land in this field here. I don't know if you can see this park. And right about this area they would land, and this is my home here, look across into the field and see it land. And when it landed, the starlings would go down and they would make this craft. And I saw this many times, and I was in kindergarten, and I would go and, you know, they have tell what you've seen, and I would tell them about seeing the spaceships, and all the kids really thought that was great. And they used to ask me to speak every day about my experiences and seeing what the the aliens were doing. After we moved away, I joined the Air Force and learned to fly. Flew T-33s, and along the way I met a German scientist, which is kind of strange in a way, but it happened that a good friend of mine happened to be German, and his father had come from Germany, and we took a trip to Florida together, and he met this scientist, and this scientist claimed that he had seen a UFO. As a matter of fact, 4 of the scientists were at White Sands Proving Ground, and they were walking up a ridge, and just as they got to the top of the ridge and just their heads came over the top of the ridge, they saw this UFO down in this valley. And there's 5 little aliens that were picking up rocks. Now it sounds funny, but I didn't particularly believe the story at the time. But we were with this German scientist for 2 weeks, and he kept on repeating the story. And he told that he went back to headquarters, and the scientists told the White Sands colonel that they'd seen this UFO, and he said, "No, you didn't. You just forget about it." So that was one of the first experiences that I had. I went to James Connolly Air Force Base for navigation training, and here I am in front of an aircraft. And while I was there, I was asked to be a courier and take secret classified messages over to 12th Air Force headquarters from James Connolly Air Force Base. And when I arrived there, there was an officer there that I gave the classified messages to. And I said, "What do you do, sir?" He says, "Oh, my job is to schedule UFOs into Gray Army Air Force Base. And they pick up cargo and so on and take them away." And I didn't think to ask him whether it was our UFOs or alien UFOs, but very early I heard that there was UFOs in the Air Force. And they were at Gray Army Air Force Base, and the interesting thing about that is that there's some secret hangars there, at least I was told that, and that these craft would land and be moved into the hangars, and at the same time, large amounts of cargo would come in on trucks. And the strange thing is that these trucks would come on and they would not come out of the base. People would see, hundreds of trucks go on the base and nothing come out. I'm not sure what that meant, but it was kind of strange. James Connolly allegedly had discs flying out of it. That was the word that we were told. I did not see any discs. This happens to be Michael Schratt's pictures of discs that were at James Connolly and other bases. When I graduated from flight, transferred to Athens, Greece, and here we're going into Athens and seeing the Acropolis and the Parthenon. And the fellow that was in the office next to me was a pilot who had come from Korea, and he flew B-25s over Korea, and he said he was flying there one day on a bombing mission, and flying off his right wing is a UFO. And this UFO stayed with him for an extended period of time and started doing loops around the aircraft. And then it flew off in high speed. Now, again, I didn't see that, but I believe what these people are telling me because it's first-hand accounts. Then I was transferred to London, England, and there I flew tanker aircraft. My mouth is dry. And in the tankers, we were up every night, and the idea was that when the weather got bad, the fighters had very short time airborne, only an hour or so, and they would need to be refueled when the fog rolled in England, and they would go off to Spain or Germany. Well, we were up there with 16 hours of fuel, and we were told that they had had bad occurrences when the RAF fighters went after the UFOs, and that some of them didn't come back, and they asked us if we would chase the UFOs instead. Sure I wanted to do, but what the heck. And they said that that they didn't bother unarmed aircraft, which we were not armed. It was just the fighters that tried to fire at them, they get mad at it. Well, in any case, we're up there one night, just as the sun's coming down, and London Control spotted a UFO over the center part of England. And we're flying up here over the North Sea, and the UFO is down here near Stonehenge in the center of England. So we're at some 33,000 feet, and the UFO is at about 1,000 feet. So we had to move from the North Sea down to where they were, which would take 20 minutes or so. But we were doing some 400 miles an hour, and we're diving down, and we looked over at the red line of the aircraft. We're going 30 miles over the speed limit, so to speak, on the aircraft. The red line means if you fly above that speed, your wings will come off, which is a bad thing. So anyhow, we had to pull back on the power. But we look on the radar, and interestingly enough, on the radar is this huge radar return. And if you fly over Scotland, one of the most prominent radar returns is the Firth of Forth Bridge, which is shown here. And the radar return was just like the Firth of Forth Bridge. Well, assuming that they're the same type of object, the Firth of Forth Bridge is almost 100 years old, and it's made out of old iron and steel, but it's roughly this shape, and that's the same shape that the UFO had. And when we got near Stonehenge, England, by that time we had slowed down some. It's out in front of us, and it was actually at night, but this is what it looked like. It looked like a long cylinder-shaped object. If the radar was correct, it was almost a mile long. It was a huge object just hovering over the center of England. When we got close to it, about a mile or so away, it just went up into space. We were doing about 400 miles an hour. I would say that it probably did 400,000 miles an hour going up. In any case, we couldn't catch it. And this is what it looked like in space. This is an item that would indicate that there was interest by the London royal family, that we got an invitation to the officers club, and the speaker was Prince Phillip. And when he was during his speech, he asked that he could speak to the air crews that had chased the UFOs over England. And we didn't know how he knew, but I guess from the London control people had told him. So in any case, we sat down with Prince Phillip, and we had a nice conversation and dessert, and everybody's smoking cigars in those days. In any case, I told him just the story that I had just told you, and a couple of the other fellows had their stories. And I asked Prince Phillip why he was interested in UFOs. And he said that his uncle, the Earl Lord Mountbatten, had seen the UFOs up close. So from that day on, I believe completely in the validity of UFOs existing, because I heard it from the prince. Besides that, I've seen them on many occasions. So, but how many here have seen UFOs? Have you ever wondered if you really saw it? I mean, you know, you always have that feeling, did I really see this object from another world? It's hard to understand. Well, here's a picture of UFOs over England at an air show. They show up at the air shows on a regular basis. I was then transferred from England to Hampton, Virginia, which is shown here, and to the headquarters at Tactical Air Command at Langley, Virginia. And I was there only a few days when the Cuban Missile Crisis broke out. And I don't know if you remember this back in 1962. Some of you obviously are younger than that, but the Soviets had built missiles and put them in Cuba and were ready to fire them at the United States. And being that I had been in Europe, I had gained a top secret clearance, and I was one of the few people on base that had the top secret clearance that they could make a courier. So I had flown a couple missions down near Cuba, and they pulled me out of the flying jobs, and we had started building up our forces. All kinds of fighters and bombers went into southern United States so that we could fight the Cuba and the Soviets in Cuba if we needed to. Well, in any case, my job was to go from Tactical Air Command headquarters, from General Sweeney to General LeMay. And I would make this trip sometimes twice a day, and I would be carrying top secret material that would indicate what was happening and how much the Soviets were building their missiles and this kind of thing. And one day, General LeMay said to me, tell Sweeney, if they shoot down one of our reconnaissance aircraft, we're going to go in and bomb them. And I said, yes, sir. I went back and told Sweeney what General LeMay had said. So our forces were ready to go in and bomb Cuba on a moment's notice if we lost a plane. And lo and behold, we did. But at the last moment, President Kennedy, probably smarter than some of us, decided not to let us go in there. A Soviet S-75 had shot them down. One interesting thing is that part of the information that we were getting was that there was U-2s, besides U-2s, there was UFOs over Cuba, and that they were seen apparently finding out what the Soviets were doing. We have found that wherever there's nuclear missiles, the U-2s, the UFOs show up. Back at Langley, after the missile crisis died down, one of my friends was an F-106 pilot, and he told me the story that F-106s had been shot down by a UFO in Japan. And this is what the F-106 looks like. At the time, it was our fastest aircraft, and they had taken two of them and taken them to Misawa, Japan, and over the Sea of Japan, the UFO was tracked one day, and they launched a couple fighters. One fighter had problems and came back immediately, and the second one went after the UFO. Now, he happened to be in the command post, and he could listen to the operation going on, and that the F-106 pilot was closing in on the UFO and fired its missiles at the UFO, and they went directly towards it, the UFO, and it looked like it hit it, and he explained, I've got it, it's blown up, and when the smoke and everything cleared, the UFO was still there. There was some kind of a shield that the UFO had that kept it from being destroyed. Then the UFO started coming towards him, and he said, the UFO is coming towards me, and it has some kind of a beam. I can see the beam. And with that, the radio went dead. Talking among the pilots, we found that we had lost quite a few aircraft in attempting to knock down the UFOs. This is a drawing of what it looked like. It was confirmed as a disc shape. They sent out aircraft to find the pilot. They never found any evidence that it ever existed. And it had been obviously blown up or absorbed by the UFO. Now, at Langley Air Force Base, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Langley was the home of where the Apollo mission started from. And they had built, sounds funny, but they'd built like a section of the moon and had these great big cranes, and the astronauts were kind of flew objects to get the idea of what it's like to land on the moon. And as I would go through, I would meet different people and so on, and it was kind of an open secret, but they had claimed that they had found alien bases on the moon. And these are some pictures that I've been able to gather up, which indicates that there is some kind of structures on the moon. And I think that in fact is the case, that aliens are there. We have indications that they're doing mining there and probably use that as a base to come here. Triangle-shaped object here and possible other object up on this point. And this slide is rather interesting in that the This is one of the early slides taken before our astronauts actually got there, but they indicate some kind of a base or a UFO of some kind. Now, when you're in Tactical Air Command, you're also part of the Navy. That sounds funny, but we're the Air Force part of the Atlantic Fleet, and consequently, I periodically would have to go over to Norfolk, Virginia, and work for Admiral Moore, who eventually gave me a letter of commendation. But one day, we're playing an exercise in the command post, and there's like 50 people in the command post, and they say, everybody out of the command post except for the media presenter and the commander of the command post, who was a captain. And with that, everybody leaves, and Admiral Moore comes in. So there's only 3 people in the command post that normally have 50 people. And after about an hour or so, he came back out and he left. We went back in, and I said to the media guy that I knew pretty well because I briefed periodically with him, you know, what was going on. And he said that they had reports of a UFO over the Atlantic Ocean, and that the carriers were launching aircraft to pick them up. And they thought that the UFO had come out of the ocean and was flying, you know, over the Atlantic, and they were trying to pick it up. Well, they launched fighters to find the UFO and get gun camera film of it, and some F-4s were launched. And according to him, they had sent the gun camera film to the command post, which he had shown to Admiral Moore. He said the interesting thing about it is when Admiral Moore came in the command post, he said, is this a Russian operation with us, or are we doing this alone? And this is 1966. And they said, no, it was just our own. And we had been chasing him. Again, we didn't really catch him, but we got some good video of it. In 1968, I was sent to Vietnam, and again, my job was a briefer there in intelligence at 7th Air Force Headquarters. And I worked for General Brown, who has his biography. And in the biography, he says they weren't called UFOs, they were called enemy helicopters. They were seen up around the DMZ in the early summer of 1968. Well, I had briefed him about them, and I don't remember calling them helicopters, but I think we just called them unidentified aircraft. But UFOs were seen on a fairly regular basis in Vietnam. They seemed to come and enjoy watching the war, so to speak. You know, we're kind of, a lot of us don't think about it, but we're, you know, kind of warlike. We seem to be in war all the time. There's a couple going on right now, you know. In any case, this photograph happened to be given to me by a Navy commander, Bethune, but it's a rather interesting picture that he had gotten close up. After a year in Vietnam, I came back to Scott Air Force Base, and which is in Illinois. And again, I was a briefer, and I briefed on a regular basis in intelligence every morning, which is not the greatest thing. You have to come in early in the morning, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and prepare your briefing for generally at 8 o'clock. And you go in the command post, and they have 4 or 5 slides. We only have 2 here, but there you have 5, and they like you to keep the screens filled with slides. So I went down to the Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon, and there's a section off the Pentagon where they have literally a room this big full of slides and pictures and movies and everything you could ever want for video. Well, in any case, I went in there and I got about 1,000 slides, and many of these are, you know, secret and top secret slides, you know, of Soviet aircraft, there's SAM missiles and things that they don't let the public see. But I mentioned to the fellow behind the counter after I got like 1,000 slides, I said, you know, about once a month I brief a UFO sighting, pretty much like I'm doing now. In any case, I need some pictures of UFOs. The fellow says, we got a whole vault full of UFO pictures and gun camera film, but you can't have them. I said, what do you mean? I'm the general's briefer. General Canton sent me to get slides and so on, and you just gave me 1,000 slides, many of which were top secret and stuff. He said, you can't have any. He said, they're in a vault. The vault is guarded, and you need written authorization from a 4-star general, unified commander with the need to know to get those pictures of UFOs. This is the highest classified data in the Air Force. Now, one interesting thing is no one ever said UFOs didn't exist. No one ever said that, you know, they weren't there. This is myself and my wife just to prove that I was in the Air Force. Also the fact that I'm married to a very beautiful lady. And from Scott Air Force Base, I was sent to Thomas McGuire Air Force Base. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but one of the things that we're briefing about one morning was the 1976 UFO over Tehran, Iran. Most of you have heard about that, but the fact that it's been released, but at the time that I briefed it, I think it was a secret message coming in that these UFOs were, this one large UFO was there, and it was very intense, alternating lights, and that many, even hundreds of people could see it from Tehran. And the public calling the Iranian Air Force got them to launch some fighters, the F-4 fighters. And 2 fighters were launched, and a Lieutenant Perazzi was in one of them, and he was ahead of the other aircraft. And when he got closer to him, he said it looked something like this. It was blue lights on the outside, more or less a cylinder with red lights going around the side. This is his drawing, by the way, of what he saw the UFO looked like. And he was thinking in terms of getting closer in, possibly to fire on it, and in any case some kind of electromagnetic interference affect his aircraft. His instrumentation went out, and he turned back for the base. The second jet came in, and he could see that there was a smaller object being detached from the large UFO, and he got closer. And this is a depiction of what it looked like, which actually was made in a German movie. And this is what he thought it looked like. But some smaller UFOs, some 4 UFOs, came out of the large major UFO towards him. And he kind of got scared. In any case, he tried to launch his Sidewinder missiles, and the same thing happened to his instrumentation. The missiles wouldn't launch, and his communication went down. He couldn't communicate, and pretty much his instruments went down. All he had was enough to fly the aircraft. They did not disrupt his engines so he could continue flying, and he still had his controls. Now, this lieutenant name was Jafari, and recently he was at the National Press Club, and the lieutenant through the years got promoted to general. And he had his story, which is some of this is coming from. But I'm not sure that he knew this, but we were being told that the UFO was on satellite. At the same time, we were picking up the UFO over Tehran on satellite. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but we pick up about 50 fast walkers per month on our satellites, indicating that in round numbers, 25 are entering our atmosphere and 25 are leaving our atmosphere. And these are being picked up on a regular basis. Now, McGuire is actually 3 bases in one, which is in the center of New Jersey. And McGuire is on the western side, then Fort Dix, and then Lakehurst. And this area is rather interesting history to it. And this is the entrance to Fort Dix. At one time it was training for the Army. There's still some training going on there. But there's a lot of trucks and tanks and that kind of thing there. And here's the headquarters. Here we are at Lakehurst Naval Air Station. And Lakehurst is famous for the Hindenburg. I don't know if you remember the story. But the Hindenburg is moving into Lakehurst and apparently hit by lightning and destroyed in May of 1937. So things do happen at these bases. And back in 1960, we had these Bomark missiles. And these Bomark missiles were designed to knock down Soviet bombers that were coming in, and they were armed with nuclear warheads. One day, one caught on fire. The Bomark started burning, and it blew up and essentially blew up the whole site. But no nuclear weapons exploded. It was strictly the explosives on board the craft that actually are designed to set off the nuclear weapon, which went up. But this area is still pretty much off limits today. It's all fenced off, and they're still having trouble with radiation and so on there. Back at McGuire, the UFOs were starting to be picked up this one night on January 1978. And 11 UFOs were counted in the pattern, and they seemed to be all disc-shaped craft, and an alien was seen on the ground at Fort Dix. And military policemen came upon the alien and told him to stop. The alien wouldn't stop, and he fired his gun allegedly 5 times into the alien, who was mortally wounded but took off running towards the Air Force Base. In any case, the alien is running off, and this military policeman is after him, and they started getting a whole group of people chasing him. They had the military police on the Air Force side, they had the security police on the Army side, and the state police were all after the alien, so to speak, to find out what he was doing. This aerial view that I took gives you an idea where it was happening. But this is McGuire here. This is the end of the runway, and the alien was actually over here in this area. And the people that I was in contact with were air policemen who were over on the Air Force side, and they can see all the searching going on over in the Fort Dix area. And the UFOs are in the pattern, and they seem to be angry about all of this. And the Sergeant Moore wrote and told that he had found the UFO on the end of the runway. He had announced this to the sergeant at the desk, and later on he made this drawing of what he saw on the ground there. And they set up a perimeter guard around the alien, and almost immediately some planes started coming in from Wright-Patterson, and they carried a special group of people, and they came in and took over the guarding of the alien, and he was sprayed and pictures were taken and so on. And very quickly the plane was loaded and taken off for Wright-Patterson. Well, about this time in the morning, I came on the base and through the National Guard area, and they had a big check at the gate. Normally they wave you right through, but this day they checked all your credentials. They said there was an alert going on, and as I drove on base, I could see the red lights out on the end of the runway. And my job was at this 21st Air Force headquarters, where again we had a command post. That was kind of the system in those days, and every morning there'd be briefings for the generals. I went in the command post, and when I walked in, they said an alien had been shot and was on the end of the runway, and that a plane had come in, a C-141, which I flew, was coming in from Wright-Patterson to pick up the alien. And the strange thing was all happening within a matter of hours or almost minutes. It's like the people at Wright-Patterson knew what was happening and had launched planes almost immediately. In any case, this group came in, picked up the alien, and were taking it back there. And my job was to confirm the story, which I called military police, and they confirmed that this was going on. Talked to the radar people. Yes, there's UFOs in the air, and talked to the tower. Tower people said yes, they could see things, that something was going on, and aircraft in the air were seeing things. This gives you an idea what the base and where the, having trouble here. The alien was shot in this area here where there's a lot of vehicles, and ran across to the end of the runway and was found about this point. Now the interesting thing is that there's this open area here which is all cement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Again, with more UFOs, and my job was to brief General Sadler that morning. And just before I went on to brief the story about the alien being there, they said, don't brief it, we want to, so many words, keep it quiet. Again, the pilots were seeing UFOs and in the pattern. And that morning, after my regular briefing, I went over to the photo lab, and the photo lab indicated that they had taken pictures of something very strange, and they actually handed me the envelope, and I went to open it, and they said, no, he can't see that. So I never actually opened the envelope to see, which I assume was aliens. Interestingly enough, it started snowing, and by the next morning we had this huge pile of snow. And I've never seen this before, but we had a military policeman guarding the snow. Now, part of the story that I never could confirm is that the craft crashed, or part of a craft was thrown out, like a escape pod, and that the alien was in the escape pod. Again, I can't confirm it. But all the security police that had been out guarding the alien were flown to Wright-Patterson, and on the way they were threatened that if they ever told the story, they might be thrown out of the aircraft. Now, later on, Leonard Stringfield got the story, and I found out about it, from my standpoint, and I started investigating and went to the security police offices and asked for any files that they had, any indication that there was aliens and all of that, and they knew nothing about it. Whether they did or not, they wouldn't admit to it. I talked to some security policemen, and one indicated that he had seen the aircraft and the UFOs in the air, but he didn't know anything about the UFO itself. And this is the area where the alien was allegedly shot. And interestingly enough, they shut down the road that went behind the base, and I'm told they were cleaning up areas. It was closed for an extended period of time, particularly at night, like something was going on for several weeks in trying to clean up whatever was left over from the alien. And this is the area where he went from Fort Dix across the fence or through the fence over to McGuire. And this is the area that I mentioned, that he's right near this very large paved area that's a half a mile long and a quarter of a mile wide, that's in the Army side of the base. And if you notice, it has large floodlights over it. So I don't know what the Army does. It's kind of a rough field to play football on with this large field. And if you see it here, right in the center of the screen, and it's kind of hidden through the woods to get there. Now here's where the vehicles were, and there's a road that's hidden by the trees, and over here this very large landing area. Here's the runway where the body was found, and C-141 taken from that landing area. And this is the spot where the alien was on the base. Now I talked to a lot of colonels and generals, and nobody seemed to know anything about it. I was one of the few that knew about it, and they retired me within like 6 weeks. The security policemen were all transferred, and the wing commander was transferred, and it seemed like anybody who knew anything about it was transferred or retired immediately. This is a gentleman. I was very upset by the fact that I couldn't find out anything about the alien, and I stopped in this antique shop, and I was telling him that I was concerned that I just talked to this general today, and he hadn't indicated any knowledge of it. And he says, well, I know all about UFOs. What do you need to know? He says, I was in OSI, and I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And one night at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from a friend of mine, and he says, come over to Hangar 18. I've got something to show you. And he says, it's in the middle of the night. My wife's asleep. He says, this is worthwhile, believe me. In any case, he goes over there. He meets his friend who lets him in this hangar. And he's shown an alien body. Now, this alien body is from the movie Hangar 18. It's not the real alien. I'm sorry, I couldn't get the picture. And he's also shown the craft. Now, the craft that he saw actually had a tarpaulin over it, and they pulled the tarpaulin up so they could see a certain amount of it, but he was warned not to take too much of the tarpaulin off because it would set off alarms and would create an embarrassing situation. So I was always interested because he said it looked just like Hangar 18. Well, I happen to have a friend, Sam Sherman, who produces movies. And I said, do you know anything about Hangar 18? He says, oh yeah, that's my friend. He said, who made that movie. And he said, that was backed by the Air Force. And that everything in that movie, as far as he was told, who made the movie, was true. So if you want to get good inside information, you might rent that movie. So, well, with this, I'm all excited now about going to Wright-Patterson, and about a month later I had an opportunity to drive there. So I called this fellow up who was the antique dealer in Vincenttown, and said, well, where do they keep the UFOs? When I go to Wright-Patterson, I want to see some. So he explained to me that, well, when you go on the base, you can go into the museum area. He says it's not there, but it's worth seeing the museum. He said, but from the museum, you can see pretty much where you want to go. There's the Wright, the monument for the Wright brothers. And he said, there's a big hangar there. That's not it either. He said, diverting for just a minute, I just want to mention the fact that at Wright-Patterson is a foreign technology division where whenever we capture an airplane or a foreign pilot flies one away and we set him up for life, we get the aircraft and we take it apart at Wright-Patterson. So that's the place where everything goes, so to speak. Any kind of foreign technology goes there. In any case, you go up Wright Boulevard, up the road there, and he said, as you go up the road, you'll find this great big propeller testing stadium. And he says, well, they tested the UFOs in there, and as well as helicopters and blades and everything else, but that was the testing point. And if you can imagine, just to the left of that, a few hundred feet, is this building 18F. Everybody's heard of a hangar 18, but it's really 18F. And this isn't even a hangar. Now, the interesting thing about this building, it was built in something like a month. Now, I've never heard of anything in the government being built in a month. But that's what they told me. This building is the fastest built building ever made, supposedly. Any case, if you go to the back of this building, it looks like this. And this is my wife's car here sitting in front of it, which is about 20 feet long. So this opening is roughly 50 feet in diameter, so that a nice-sized UFO could fit right in there. In any case, I managed to get the key and go inside, and this is what it looked like. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a UFO in there. It had been moved, but I was told that this is roughly what it looked like when I was there. In any case, the story is that I started checking around the base and talking to different people, and it's surprising, well, being that I'm military, ex-military, and interested in the subject, people will pretty much talk to you. Now, this aircraft here is a laser aircraft. It's one of the first aircraft, and our lasers are much better than most people realize. They apparently can even shoot down aircraft. And I don't know if you notice behind here, there's a runway, and this runway goes up a hill. And the idea was, could an aircraft take off faster if it was going uphill or testing it, or if it was going downhill? Well, in any case, didn't work, didn't have much advantage either way. So they built a hangar in the end of this runway. And from what I told is that's where they keep the UFOs. So if you can get in that hangar, in that runway, you'll find UFOs. And that's pretty much all I learned while I was on active duty. I've been trying to keep up with the subject ever since, and I'm convinced that UFOs exist. Some of them are ours. Most of them are alien. And they're here and they're visiting us. They haven't destroyed us yet, so I guess they can be considered fairly friendly. Some of the abductees don't think so, but I do feel that it's important that, you know, that they exist, and that at least a few people in the Air Force believe that. And later, if you want, you can get a copy of a DVD of my book. And of 13 years of files put out on a weekly basis, which started out, interestingly enough, Well, I had become the Eastern Regional Director of MUFON, and I felt that the field investigators needed some information of what was going on in the field, like the intelligence information that I used to brief in the Air Force. In any case, a friend of mine owned a museum, Steve Snyder, and he said, UFOs are a bunch of bunk, there's nothing to that. Here's General Searock, he runs the museum, he thinks they're a bunch of bunk. And 99.9% of the people in the Air Force know nothing about this, and in the other services as well. And I think you'll find that UFOs do exist, and I don't know when we'll ever find out about it, but it will be sometime in the future. That Steve Snyder said UFOs don't exist. I said, well, let me write you a weekly summary of what's going on in the field, and I'll send it out to field investigators at the same time, and see what you think. So I go to the museum meeting about a year later, and he's built a UFO that flies. And we're inside the museum pretty much like this building here, and it's flying around. It's just a model. But the point is that the average person has no idea about the information that's available about UFOs. That they're not stupid or anything, they just don't have access to the information. So I encourage you to buy the MUFON journal and send it to them, or if you don't have an extra $45, you can have them send my filer's files, which are free. I think that's a better answer, but interestingly enough, every week I advertise the MUFON journal, and I think a lot of people end up buying the journal because of our advertising and reaching some 8,000 people that I send the emails to. And a lot of people send them on to others, and I encourage you to do that. Send them to your relatives and friends and so on, to your congressman. We've got a whole list of congressmen that get them. I've got over 1,000 military that get them. And I know that they get upset if they don't get them. They call me up and said, I didn't get it today, send it to me. Well, that pretty well sums it up. UFOs are here, they're coming, they're going to be here in the future, and I think they're becoming part of us. And right today, we have at least one alien in the group out here in this. Seriously, I'm talking to abductees, and some of the abductees now are teaching the hybrids how to simulate into our society. And if you see somebody strange and you get a feeling that, gee, that guy might be an alien, there's a good chance that he is. And when you think about it, we've got all these other illegal aliens here. I mean, we might as well have, we might have a few that are from other, other planets. You never know. Well, that's about all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me? Somebody has any questions? Here comes somebody. Come on up, please. Yeah, can you come up and talk in the machine here? I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear myself very well. Hi.
I always wondered why when these planes chased the UFOs, were they under orders to fire, or they had the authority to fire at them for some reason?
Usually they're given orders from the ground to fire.
No, they had to have some authority to fire, right?
I mean, normally they're not doing it on their own.
Right.
And I think there was about a year in the early 50s where there was a squadron who was dedicated, so to speak, to try to shoot him down, and had attempted to on several occasions. and a General Chidlaw claimed that we had lost many planes and many, air crews chasing the UFOs. If you think about it, there's a lot of technological capability there that we would like to learn, and it looks like we are, in fact, back engineering them and have taken some of that information to heart.
So was the motive as in a defensive posture, or the hope that they would perhaps be able to capture one of these craft and do, as you say, reverse engineer or something?
Well, if you're in the military, the idea is that we want to protect you out, the public, from being destroyed by Russia or China, whoever it is. So we want the best possible technology. The aliens appear to have the best technology, consequently, we're trying to get it. Now, it's interesting that the Russians tried to shoot them down and the Chinese tried to shoot them down, and we've all tried to do that, and they probably think that we're pretty nasty guys when you think about it.
Right. Not very successful.
Right.
Thanks.
But they have better technology than we do, yes.
I've seen many articles that the presidents of the United States have regularly been denied information about UFOs. Do you think that is the case, that the president of the United States is not permitted to know if there are real UFOs or not?
I wasn't allowed. The president, it happens that I had a friend who knew Gerald Ford pretty well, who was a president, and he gave me his, home number, his address, and I wrote him, and I said, basically asked the question you're asking. What does he know about UFOs, and can he tell me about them, etc., or where should I go to get the information? And I have a letter from him that said so many words. When he was in Congress, he tried to find out. When he was the leader of Congress, he tried to find out. When he was vice president, he tried and requested information. And when he became president, he requested information. He said, they never told me a damn thing. That's what he said. I got the letter to prove it. I don't have it with me, but I don't think he said damn, but Yes.
George, it's my understanding that the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs taught a Physics 370 class from 1968 to 1970, where Chapter 33 was on UFOs. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Yes, I've got the book. And I think that chapter is on my website, the National UFO Center.com. And I talked to the author of the book, but there's really like 10, 15 authors, like each chapter. And he indicated that he was pretty sure UFOs were there, and that's what they were teaching the students at the academy. And one interesting thing that they said is that, assuming UFOs exist and they're flying around, an awful lot of our physics is in trouble. And that, the laws of physics don't fit what the UFOs can do. For every action, there's an equal reaction, and a lot of other various laws that may have to be revised. And he felt, even though he was a PhD scientist, he felt that that was one of the reasons why science kind of ignored UFOs, because they would have had to almost start over with science, so to speak. In other words, it changes everything. If you think about it, think about biology. I happen to believe that God formed us in the beginning, but biologists don't believe that. They feel that, there was this primordial soup, and it changed, and we gradually became more and more sophisticated, and through all years, and so on and so forth. And the fact is that biology, I think, if aliens exist, is going to have to be changed a lot. I'll give you an interesting bit of information. In Denmark, scientists are working with DNA, and they went back with the DNA, since most of the people in Denmark have blue eyes and blonde. They went back about 6,000 to 8,000 years, and they said, it stopped. 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, there was no blondes on Earth. There was no blue-eyed people. And the green eyes are similar to that. So the question is, where did blondes and blue eyes come from? If you have blue eyes and you're blonde, you may be part alien. Now, this is something to think about, in that the Bible says very clearly, the Nephilim came here. In Genesis 6, it says something to the effect that, the Nephilim came here from space, and they found the ladies of the earth very beautiful, and they mated with them. And that's about the same time we got all these blondes, these. And we have, well, I married a blue-eyed, actually she has green eyes, but blonde, and I tell her that she's an alien, but she doesn't believe me. But she looks just like the blonde that I saw when I was 5 years old, that was on that, out on that park there. So, I don't know. The aliens that I saw around those ships when I was a little kid were all blondes, the Nordics. And they were all very nice, so. Any other questions? Maybe you want to go eat. Thanks for coming. I enjoyed it.
All right, thank you, George. Thank you, everybody. That does conclude the afternoon session. With all that being said, let's eat. It is dinner time, so that will take us till about 7 o'clock this evening.